listening to Under the Umbrella podcast. Each week, we'll discuss various topics under the umbrella of the LGBTQ community. And I'm your host, Angel. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Under the Umbrella podcast. I am your host, Angel, and on today's episode, I will be speaking with Shahil, who is a spiritual healer and teacher that specializes in areas such as shadow work, inner child work, divine masculine and divine feminine healing, and subconscious reprogramming. On today's episode of Under the Umbrella, I will talk to Shahil about how molestation turned gay is a myth. I am just getting mentally prepared for this because I hear a lot of stories from people who have been molested, who have been raped, and I want him to tell his story, and I'm just so grateful that he's going to tell his story to me and my listeners. And my wish is that his story, as well as all the other stories that are being told, reach millions of people and empower people. So with that being said, let's get to it. Hey, Shahil. Welcome to an episode of Under the Umbrella podcast. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. So as you know, we'll be talking today about the title. I put it as Molestation Turned Gay is a myth. For so many different reasons, but that's what we'll be talking about today. And before I get into my questions, I wanted to read this quote for you and anybody else who may share a story similar to yours.
Okay.
And the quote reads, "You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." And that quote is by Anne Lamott.
I love it.
I love that quote. I think it's very beautiful because people get upset when they hear about you saying something negatively about them, but you can impact somebody's life in a negative or positive way. So, but that being said, my first question for you is, at what age did you know that you were attracted to other, I said males, but I would assume boys because you would have been a child, because we've had personal conversations about this before.
I would have to say around age 4 or 5 is when I noticed that my attraction towards boys was different than it was towards girls. So I say around age 4 or 5. And that created a space for me that made me feel very socially awkward because I didn't understand why I related more so to the feminine aspects of girls. And when it came to, what we consider boy things,
right?
Sports and, all the things that the boys did, like I didn't really resonate with that, but I also found myself remember having crushes on boys. And so I was always that kid, like on the playground, the girls would be doing their thing, the guys would be doing their thing, and I would be off to the side, like asking myself, where do I fit in? Because I knew that it was because what I felt, I knew it was different than what I was seeing. Like when we were kids, we played catch a girl, get a girl, and I wanted to be the girl. I wanted to be called. So So I say around 4 or 5 is when I noticed that I had an attraction towards boys. I hate to say sexual attraction because it wasn't that. It was just I noticed that I liked the way they looked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so the next question is that I want you to share your very personal story about being molested and or raped as a child by a relative. And I want
Okay.
to take all the time that you need. I am
Okay.
not in a rush. So I
Okay.
don't want you to rush your story is where I'm
Okay.
going.
Okay. Um, so I'm going to give it to you in stages,
Okay.
if that's okay. Let me get some
Yes.
water. So, unfortunately, um, I incarnated into a family that, for generations, it was heavily saturated with sexual abuse and molestation. And what's so unfortunate when you start to do research on these type of things, it typically happens to you from, people who people who you trust, adults, you family members. So I grew up in a family that the history of sexual molestation was literally passed down from generation to generation.
Mm.
And it all started at one house. And those generations, it was a group of my I guess I don't know, I guess they're like they would be considered my cousins. These were older men. It was four of them, and all of them, how you go with that one family member, how we all go to Big Mama house, everybody go to this one house, and they all
Mm-hmm.
used to be at that house, and they molested a lot of the family members.
Mm.
So the ones who they molested were my mom's generation. So a lot of my mom's generation, if from that particular era have all been molested by them. And so what happened was my mom's generation, people in my mom's generation, perpetuated the same cycle. So for me, it was my uncle. Um, it started around age 6.
Mm.
Um, and because he lived in our home. It started around age 6, and it went on to, I say, about maybe around age 8.
Mm-hmm.
Because after that, he moved out. Um, around age 8 is when he moved out. So what's interesting is that when it first began to happen, I remember being taken down into the basement of our home, and we used to go over by like this furnace, and then he would have me do things, perform sexual acts on him, and then he would actually perform sexual acts on me. um he One time, it was so twisted. I remember him taking like some sheer curtains, the linen ones, the kind of clear ones, the white ones. And I remember him wrapping them around me and was like, "You're my wife." And I'm like 6, 7 years old. So the role playing is he did a lot of that. And then he started to become violent, to where he would threaten to hurt my brother or sister, if I said anything. So it had gotten to a point where I had gotten so conditioned to that abuse, to where I would literally, like, I would know when he would want to do it, and I would literally put my brother and sister in a room and like make them peanut butter and jelly crackers, because I was always very independent. My mom always worked. I would make them peanut butter and jelly crackers and sit them in front of the TV, and have them look at Sesame Street and close the door, be like, "Don't come out," and I would go downstairs. Um, it it got to the point to where, because when you experience that type of trauma, you create a lot of confusion, um, within the person, to the point to where it even um, creates confusion within their DNA. So, I was exposed to sexual energy at a very young age. And it had gotten to the point to where I can honestly say, and I had never said this before, where I started to like it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, after he moved out, I guess I went through that period of suppression and repression, because he would come around over the years and like he would have girlfriends and stuff like that. And I remember being a kid being jealous of his girlfriends. Um, so I don't know, I guess I developed, I don't know what they call it, Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be jealous of the women that he would bring around. And I didn't know why. It wasn't until I was about age 16 or 17 when he came to me, well, when he my grandmother, because I had been acting out, I was very rebellious, like I was very disrespectful towards him, because remember, he had been gone for years and he would come back around in and out, and I would be very disrespectful towards him, like very disrespectful. And I remember my grandmother put me to the side one day and she said, "Why are you so disrespectful towards your uncle? Why don't you like your uncle?" And I was like, and I remember saying, "Grandma, I don't know. I just don't like him.
Mm.
I just don't like him." And one day and at this time he had become the deacon of the church, of my family's church. And I remember we were in church.
Oh wow.
And he was a guest speaker. And I remember him sitting there. I mean, I remember him being in the pulpit and he was speaking about the 10 Commandments. And then he got to the space where he had started saying something about homosexuality. And he was talking about, men shouldn't walk around with long nails and be effeminate and all this and all of that. And at that time, my nails were very long. Like they're long now. They've always grown really fast. And I remember looking down at my nails. And I remember, I was like, damn, is he talking about me? And then I remember looking up at him and he had this facial expression that triggered all these memories that I had suppressed. So when I saw this facial expression, I started being inundated with flashbacks of him touching me. To where it created anxiety within me. To the point to where I remember, when churches call you up for prayer, I deliberately went in his line to get prayer. And I'm just going to say this. I was the one who was leading the prayer, but it wasn't in prayer hands. so, so I attacked them. And I remember being enraged, and I remember just like going crazy, and all of the adults. I also come from a family where children are seen and not heard. And all the adults were like, "What are you doing? You're disrespecting an adult," and da 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 da. And I remember screaming, "He raped me! He raped me!" in front of my whole family. And I had absolutely no support because, again, I come from a generation where they swept that type of things. They swept those type of things under the rug. To this day, my grandmother has still not been able to have a conversation with me about what he did to me. And this is her son, this is my mother's brother. So I remember crying. I remember running out of the church. And at that time, we still had pay phones. And I went over to the payphone and I called my mom, and I was just hysterical. She was there in like 10 minutes. And I told her what happened. And my mom, she's a warrior. She's a warrior. She's a mama bear. Always has been. And I remember her I remember her looking at him and saying, if it was not for our mother, you would be dead. Um, she was the only person who came to my rescue. My grandmother, his mother, was like was there in silence. My
Mm.
mother, the only person that came to my rescue. Um, and she took me home and she nurtured me and supported me the best way that she possibly could. But
Mhm.
I remember feeling so much guilt coming from her
Mm.
and like feeling like she had failed. And in her experience in with that, we've always been able to kind of like talk about things. Um and she was explaining to me that she's always wanted to protect us from that because she was the victim of it. And this was her. When she was raped by my uncle's dad, because they have different dads. So she grew up in a house where he was molesting her. Um, and she also was a victim of an assault where she was
It's
she
okay.
um, she
Take your
was a
t-
little
take your
she was a
time,
she was a
please.
little she was a little girl. And she was telling me about how when she was a little girl, a white man raped her that she had not known. She was walking to school.
Mm.
Um, and she remember. So this is one of those cases where it's someone outside of the family, but typically it's commonly people
Right.
um, from what I've seen and studied. And she was telling me her story, and I was just like. And I remember feeling more sorry for her than me at that moment. But
Wow.
it was exposed to me the cycle, and then um, I am, I feel like I kind of help impede or kind of help dissolve that cycle because once I screamed out like he raped me, like I started to find out all these other family members started coming forward.
Mm.
And I'm like, I cannot believe so many of us have experienced this
Mm-hmm.
and have experienced it from the same person.
Oh,
And
whoa.
my even my uncle, he used to go to that house, so he was molested in that house too. Um, the house of my cousins, that other generation, he was
Mm-hmm.
molested in the house too, um, and we um after so I feel like that me just letting that out, I feel like it created a platform to allow other people to come forward within my family. Because again, that
Absolutely.
was one of those things where it was really, really swept under the rug. Now that I'm an adult, I don't hear it. I haven't heard stories about that or
Mm-hmm.
any that or that happening to anyone. So I'm hoping that this cycle has been broken.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it went on. It went on for a few years, and really didn't know how much it really affected me emotionally until I became a teenager. Um, and again, I was one of those people who was where it happened so much to where I developed that Stockholm syndrome. And the interesting thing about it is that I was addition to um, that experience so much so that when I was 16 years old, when I came out, I attracted an older man. He was 12 years older than me. Um, my uncle, who's also an older man, he was 12 years older than me. And he, the type of sexual or the type of sex that was had, I feel as though it was abusive because it mirrored the sexual energy of my uncle, even down to him physically putting his hands on me. Um,
Mm.
so at 16, I'm out here looking for love and wanting to be loved, and I here I am. I come in contact with a person who is a predator. Um, and he, um, just like my uncle was a predator. So it's like, I grew up attracting that type of energy towards me because it was within me. And um it took a long time to finally heal from that and let that go. I remember when I was 27 years old, and my uncle came to the house, and he was drunk. So he's turned into alcoholism. He's an alcoholic. He was drunk, and I remember I opened the door, and when I opened the door, I just knew what he was there for. I just knew it. I felt it. He didn't say a word.
Mm.
And I looked at him, and he's like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay. So I went upstairs and I got my mom, and I'm like, your brother is here and he wants to talk to me. And I was like, I don't want to talk to him if you're not in the room. So, my mom came down, and, he started to apologize to me. And I remember snapping and saying, um, if it wasn't for you, um, I wouldn't be sick. I wouldn't be gay. Um,
Mm.
you ruined my life. Um, and in that moment, I remember just having that. I remember just like going crazy because I've never slept with a woman. So, I went through life hearing that, how do you even know if you gay if you've never slept with a woman? And then I started to think, like, because initially my perception was I wasn't allowed or given a chance to be straight because I was molested.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to think back as I started doing inner work, and I was like, oh shit, Cameron, you like boys before you were even touched by him.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So it turned from, no, that molestation did not make me gay. I was already different. I was already different. Um, and like I said, I remember being 4 or 5 years old. Then the molestation and all that started happening around 6. But when I started doing the work and I started doing like inner work and started doing healing, and I was like, oh wow, I can't really, I can't have him bear that cross. Even though that based on my level of awareness at that time, I felt like it influenced me. And it definitely influenced me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because I was prone to depression, PTSD,
Mm.
anxiety. I ended up starting abusing drugs and alcohol. Um, Not knowing that it was all because of that particular experience. I grew up to be, because a lot of times when we experience sexual trauma at young ages, we grow up to be adults who don't know how to really process our emotions effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, it created a pattern, a destructive pattern within me later in life, that I didn't realize was connected to to those experiences, even down to physiological sense. Because like right now, even today, I get triggered when I see um, like the Crisco can, or the smell of it, because he would use that.
Mm.
So even today, like if I see it, like it will, because of that muscle memory from that experience and the scent of it brings back that. Not to, it doesn't do it to the point where I start to like having PTSD, but it's like a remembrance that's like, ugh, that's uncomfortable. Um, so yeah, but I can honestly say at this point where I'm at now at 37, that experience did not make me gay. And I'm speaking from my own personal perspective
Mm-hmm.
because I've always had an attraction to boys even prior to that. Now, I did at one point think that it was my fault because I felt like I liked boys, and I felt like maybe I was giving him a symbol or some type of sign. But then at the same time, I had to stop beating myself up because I'm like, he's an adult. You know what I mean? He's
Exactly.
still an adult. And the interesting thing about me is that even after I did all of that hooting and hollering, when he came to apologize, I looked at him and I said, I accept your apology. And I said, because I know you were touched too. And
Mm.
you you chose to, instead of choosing to heal from that and not making that same mistake, you repeated the behavior that you learned. And I said, you know, so I accept your apology because I know that you were touched too. Um, and you were just doing what you were conditioned. Now, even though you had a choice, I'm still not taking away what you did, but I understand what you went through, because you did it to me, and I know it happened to you, and I forgive you. Even in that moment, I can't really honestly say that it was genuine. And I say that because I've always had the heart of a healer. I've always been able to understand why people do the things that they do. And I feel like, in that moment, because I was picking up his energy and I was feeling his pain. And like he was he was remorseful. So I'm not like, he was remorseful. You could tell that that had been weighing on him for years, and it still does weigh on him today. Um,
Mm.
he's very uncomfortable when he sees me. Um, and I'm not uncomfortable when I see him, but what makes me uncomfortable is I feel how uncomfortable he is.
Mm.
Um, and to make it even, so I feel like in that moment, my forgiveness for him at 27, I really didn't forgive him until I was around 30 something. Because I was in the car with my grandma and I said, you need to tell your son that I forgive him, and tell him that I'm not holding it over his head anymore. He can, he can work on his alcohol issues. And it was like crickets. Like my grandmother was like, I was like, tell him I forgive him. And I was like, and I told her, I said, I forgive you too for not being there for me,
Mm.
for not even nurturing me and knowing that your child did this to me. So it wasn't until I was around, I'm 37. I guess that's about 32 where I really let it go. Um, and what even devastated me more was that his daughter, which is my cousin, we kind of grew up raising her, and I never wanted her to know that about her dad. Um,
Mm.
but somehow, some of my cousins, my younger cousins, told her, they were teasing her, like, yeah, your daddy raped Cam. I never wanted her to know that.
Right.
And right now, today, because of that, that created a rift within their relationship because me and her are very close.
Mm.
That created a rift in her relationship, and I want so desperately for them to heal their connection. I had to have a conversation with her and say, hey, I've forgiven your dad. I need you to as well.
Mm.
I know hearing what he did to me, your favorite cousin, I know that devastated you. Um, but at some point when you're ready, you're going to have to forgive him. And I was showing her like I've forgiven him. So um, that was pretty much how my that's pretty much my story when it comes to molestation. With the exception of that, I've also growing up, I lived in a community where older men would would I guess kind of tease me or kind of like low key flirt with me. I've had men try to lure me into places. I've been in situations where I was walking home, and I was back at that time. I was, I guess, I switched when I walked. So I guess that was drawing their attention. I used to have men follow me from the library to my house. Um,
Oh.
I've had men, um, in this one particular time, I remember I was in middle school. Now these are situations that happened after, the molestation from my uncle. So they're around these times. I was around 13, 14,
Mm-hmm.
getting a little older. And I remember one time I had there was this crow that I used to see all the time that I saw for years, and I never heard this crow voice. Like I would just always see it. It would sit on the light pole. Um, and I remember I was running late for school, and I wanted to take a shortcut. And I remember walking to my alley. This is U City, so we had an alley, and I remember seeing the crow. And I remember walking down the alley, and I just remember hearing the crow calling like crazy. And I had never heard this bird call. And I looked around, and the bird and the and I was like, "Is this bird talking to me?" And I'm like 14, 15. I'm like, "What the hell?" And it was just calling like crazy. And as I looked down, there was a man in a pickup truck who sped up to me, pushed the door open, and tried to grab me and abduct me.
Oh.
He grabbed my arm, and I remember slipping out of his hand and running, and just running and running and running and running and running and running. I don't even remember where I went. I just ran.
Mm.
Um, so, I have been attempted to be assaulted in that manner from complete strangers, and I've also experiencing it coming from someone who I'm supposed to look to for support, protection, and guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of experienced it on both ends. And then those experiences created this thought form in my brain that that was okay, and that's why I was in that abusive relationship for 4 years, 4.5 years, while I was getting beat on and basically sexually abused because I was taught that I had to go through that in order to feel love.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. I know we've talked about this in our personal lives, how, especially in the Black community, these stories are more common than people will admit.
Hmm.
And it breaks my heart to hear anybody, any person, especially from a child standpoint, being molested or being raped. You know what I mean? Because it changes them in so many ways. I've heard so many stories of it. And then it's so many stories where families just sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen.
Hmm.
They don't want to talk about it. And it's like, and then I have like even just listening to your story, like, of course I have my set questions that I don't even know if I'll want to get to or may get to, from a different standpoint on a totally different episode. But just wondering like how does that change the family dynamic? Like, because some people, they want to see this person prosecuted. They want them in jail so they don't do this to somebody else. And, you being who you are, you, for your story, you learn to heal and forgive
Hmm.
this uncle, even though he clearly is still living with the guilt of that.
Hmm.
Um, I, I keep telling you this, and I appreciate you so much for sharing your story because these stories need to be told. And I
Hmm.
don't want anybody to ever feel like if they are or if they have experienced any type of molestation or rape from a family member or anybody for that matter, and if they are under the LGBT umbrella, that's why. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
There's so many predators and pedophiles out here.
I honestly truly believe that, um, people. And my views on sexuality have changed over the years because at one point I didn't believe in bisexuality. I'm like, who am I? Maybe these people really just like both. I used to
You
be
see my face? You see my
like,
face?
I used to be like, I could always be like, y'all just greedy, y'all nasty, You
Yes.
know what I mean? I was judgmental when it came to it, so I opened up and understood that, hey, it's people out here who really just like both.
Mm-hmm.
It's people out here who are assertive in knowing that ever since they were little, that they knew that they were different, that they felt like that they were born gay. We can't take away. Even if when we look in nature, there's a lot of species of animals that participate in, guess what, homosexual activity. Um,
It is true.
so when you hear people say, "Oh, it goes against nature because nature is man and woman," well, it's plenty of species of animals who literally same sex. So
Mm-hmm.
and that's in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And Mother Nature makes no mistake. So it's like when we then on top of being molested, and then dealing with being that a person of who has homosexual choices, it can be even more devastating because you are already being put in a position to question who you are.
Right.
I mean, you're being taught that who you are is bad and it's wrong and it's not of God, or it's not Christ-like, and we get socialized to hate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not talk about the amount of I work with male clients, straight male clients who, guess what, who suffered sexual abuse from men.
Yeah.
Who There's a lot of straight men
Yes.
walking around here in our society right now today who operate from a place of toxic masculinity, um, because of and where they project negativity, or spew hate towards gay men because they are harboring that experience, or they
Mm-hmm.
may be fighting their own sexuality, or they may be fighting or thinking that, oh, I was touched and I was molested and this is making me gay. And I'm not saying that could not sway a person, but from my experience, it's already in you. Um, it's already in you. So it's and they carry that baggage and they turn that into hatred
Mm-hmm.
because they see a man who is comfortable in his skin, who is
Yeah.
comfortable in his sexuality. Um, so there's a lot of straight men out here who are suffering from being sexually abused by men
Mm-hmm.
when they were younger, and they don't
What
have an
about the
outlet.
ones? What about the ones that have been? This is another one that people don't talk about. A lot of men being molested by women.
Yeah, and see the difference between that's when we do the whole what is it, the double standard kind of, because male
Yes.
and when in male culture, that's like a badge of honor. Like, I don't know if you've been hearing the stuff going on with the guy Lil Boosie and how he's
Yes.
his son, he paid women to suck his son's penis, and it's like that's sexual trauma. Because
Yes.
what happens is you teach these men to look at sex as something carnal, something just strictly physical, and sex is spiritual in nature. You teach them to um, um, treat women with disrespect. Treat women as tools. Men suffer
Mm-hmm.
sexual trauma by being overly sexualized as little boys, and they grow up, not understanding the true meaning of a sexual connection, and they go in and they're beating these women in. They create these personas of where it's abusive towards women. They look at them as just tools, and they don't really respect
Yep.
the divine feminine in her true essence because they were over sexualized as little boys and taught that, hey, you know, you go in, you beat it up, you get your issue off, and like you don't even nurture or care or put any passion towards creating a sacred space for the woman
Yep.
to ejaculate and enjoy the moment. They're taught to like look at women as items, and they degrade them, and And that is because they were over sexualized, or they may have experienced sexual energy from an older woman, and I guarantee you, these same men end up growing up, liking older women.
Mm.
Um, but again, we live in a society where, um, we don't give men an opportunity to even have a voice for that, because it's like, oh well, shit, that's a badge of honor, little homie. That was a, you 12, she 20, and that's rape, that's molestation.
Yes. And it's even child trafficking. Like it's
Yeah.
sex trafficking. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have heard so many stories from people of so many different walks of life, regardless of their race, their sexuality. I've heard so many stories, and I look at people, especially, people that are my age when I was a little bit younger, and you hear them talk about when they were 12, 13, that they were having sex with their babysitter or with the next door neighbor or a family friend, and it's like, that is not okay. And you wonder why you fucked up in the head. You
Mm-hmm.
wonder why. That is not okay.
Wonder why some of you grew up treating women the way you do, because like
Yes.
the innocence was taken away. And then there's some boys who who probably all for it. You know what I mean? But especially like being exposed to, and then there's the aspect you have to think about, like if children are, if they're exposed to porn at an early age, also,
Mm-hmm.
if they're exposed to that, you are being taught about sex through porno.
Right.
So then you grow up objectifying women, looking at them as items. And then let's just say you had grown up in a family dynamic where you don't even talk about sex. And see, that's another thing. I wasn't, no judgment towards my mom, but we never sat down and had a conversation about sex.
Mm.
It was never, here's about some condoms. Okay. So are you saying it's okay for me to go out here and screw? Or like what, you're
Right.
not, we are not taught if we were not taught the true sacred connection that is that sexual exchange of energy. Um so it's so many different layers that comes to this that
Yeah.
just exacerbates the issue on many different layers. So even when you have to go in and do this healing work, you have to peel back so many like it's like you're peeling back layers of an onion,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, damn, like, and you see how all of it is this connected, from the way you're socialized through your family, the way you're socialized through your environment, your outer environment outside of your family, to the experience itself. That's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work. That
Oh yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, when it comes to that, I'm gonna just definitely say this to anybody who's experienced it, and I know it's hard to, I know it's hard to not to feel guilty, because there is a level of shame that is accompanied by that.
Mm-hmm.
And that shame, forgetting spiritual in nature, that shame is built up within, a lot of people's solar plexus chakra. I mean, no, their sacral chakra, that sexual energy center. That energy is stored there, and it's it creates blockages, it creates, again, depression, anxiety, and then if you don't have coping mechanisms, and because a lot of us, we're not nurtured, we after that, because we don't tell people. A lot of people don't tell people until years later,
Yes.
so they carry that, and they harbor that, and it begins to fester within us. It festers in people in the most subconscious ways. um you may act out differently. You may be a person who grows up and, be sexually explicit, um, and just be really, really open to sex, and just, or you may be someone who may be completely detached from sex or have an aversion towards sex, or you may suffer or experience both extremes.
Yeah.
So I'm a person who's experienced both extremes. There was points in my life where I was out and I was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna have sex. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just whatever. It don't matter. It was. I remember being so carnal, and then there was moments where I was like, I'm just completely detached. I don't want to be touched. I feel nasty. I don't, but it was shame is the frequency of that shame that we carry and that gets lodged within our sacral chakras that can, if not cleared, we can um, attract these same experiences. And even when it comes to sexual trauma is just not molestation and rape. Sexual trauma is even when women or even men exchange money for sex. There's a level, even if you can hear a woman say, "Oh, well, I'm just getting money," there's still a level of shame because you have used that money as a way to make you feel better for what it is that you're doing, especially when you don't have any type of energetic connection to this person, or when you are emotionally detached from a partner and then there's sex involved and here it is, you just lying there. Let's say as a woman, you're lying there and this man is just going at it and you just like, that's sexual trauma.
Yeah, I've heard those stories too.
That's sexual trauma.
It is.
There's not a heart-to-heart connection, an energetic connection. And again, like I said, the exchange of money, that's, for sex, that's sexual trauma. And I'm not knocking people for the things that they do, but being dominated in sex like that, that's trauma. That is trauma. I'm not saying you're gonna be liberated, but when you feel the need to dominate like that, to where it comes out aggressive or be dominated like that, that's connected to some type of sexual trauma. And this is my personal experience. A woman's womb is not supposed to be beat down like that. That's not how that's supposed to go. Where's the passion? Where's the exchange of energy? Where's the soul to soul connection? And even we can even absorb other people's sexual traumas and demons because we open ourselves up to what they have within their energetic field. So even when it comes to sex, it's like if you're gonna do it, make sure it's with somebody that's of a same vibration, and you're going in with intention. You manifesting some things. You know what I mean? So sexual trauma just does not come by way of molestation and rape either. So, and I try to explain that to people when I work with them. I'm like, like you suffer from sexual trauma, and it's like, well, no, I haven't. I've never been molested. I was like, okay, but I'm seeing A, B, C, and D, and they sit there and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's why you attract certain experiences. Or you react to sex the way in which you do. So yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just going and going and going.
You're fine. No, you're fine. With you starting to go into, you're talking about some work that you've done, and it's just like I said, the few other questions I had, I can save that for some other time. I really wanted you to get your story out there, and because it needs to be told. The other questions I have that can come by way another episode. And
what other questions did you have? I'm just curious.
It was just two questions. It was just like, were there any signs your family picked up on to know you were?
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
I'm gonna be honest with you with that question. I'm gonna answer that question. It's gonna be really quick. I don't think there was any signs that were picked up. There were because when you come from a environment where things are just suppressed, you're taught to suppress and repress things and sweep them under the rug. How could you really, identify and pay attention to those type of signs? It was so interesting because I acted out. A lot of my acting out that I did was connected to my sexual trauma, and I even asked my mom. I'm like, you never picked up on any of this or never thought like any of this? Like you didn't see the signs? Like you went through this too? And it was from my particular family dynamic, nobody noticed the signs because again, we come from a family where how can they notice the signs when it does come out, they automatically sweep it under a rug or ignore it. So how would they notice the sign?
Yeah. When you were saying it, also what popped in my head just now was the whole, especially in the Black community, we really have this horrible saying of children are to be seen and not heard.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just dangerous, because when if you have something like this going on, you may put your child in a situation where they are afraid to say anything on
Mm-hmm.
top of this person threatening them, because that it literally
Because
every time I've heard this story, I hear that this person was threatened. And then you have the family, just the kids, just, you're supposed to be playing, but I don't want to hear you. I can
yeah,
see you.
yeah, that whole seen and not heard thing is and then there's another added layer to that, because then when you grow up in that type of environment, you and especially if you experience certain traumas, you're left to deal with it alone. Then you grow up and then you grow up and not being able to trust your parentals. You feel like you can
Mm,
go to them and you can't be vulnerable and come to them because it has been imposed upon you that children are seen and not heard. Now, luckily for me, my mom's household was not like that,
mm,
but she still didn't see the signs. She still didn't
mm,
know the signs. Um, did I feel like she invested a lot of energy in really understanding what I was going through emotionally and mentally? Because like my spiral started at a younger age. The very first time I tried to kill myself, I was 10. I tried to kill myself 3 times. The very first time I was 10 years old,
oh my
screaming
God.
for attention, not even knowing why I wanted to leave, just wanted to leave, not knowing that I was suffering from that sexual trauma. And I remember I remember trying to kill myself because I wanted to get out of here, but I also did it to try to get my mom's attention. She didn't
Mm.
know that I tried to kill myself at 10 years old, so I was like 30 something.
Oh wow. Wow.
She had no idea that at that time she rushed me to the ER. I had tried to kill myself.
Mm,
So, you know, and it's not that I think it's not that it's not that I couldn't go and talk to my mom, but because of our dynamic at that time, because she was also in a relationship with a man where she was in a relationship with a man, and I was also going through my own abandonment issues with my mom at that time because she wasn't really present. She was more focused on her boyfriend and her children.
mm,
So there was those other layers, those other
right.
factors that come into play that put me in a place to sit with that on my own for so
Mm,
long.
mm-hmm.
So
Um, so you already answered the next question in
okay,
everything that you said. Uh,
okay.
I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to share pertaining to your personal story before I ask you your question. I have a question about your business that I wanted to.
um, I don't have really a personal story. I mean, as far as like with my personal story, I do have a message for people who have experienced this. Um, please, please, please find an outlet to release this and to heal and to nurture. And I'm not, therapy therapy may be a great outlet. I'm not against therapy at all. Yeah, because so many Black people are like, oh, don't go to counseling, don't go to therapy. It's about really finding a sacred space with a counselor who creates an environment where you feel safe. Now,
Mhm.
they are there to support you, but there's still outside work that has to be done outside of those sessions. So I say find some type of outlet to release these energies or to finally confront them, develop courage to really finally face it and release the shame and guilt that is attached to these type of attacks.
Mhm.
Um, you know, because when you walk around with this type of baggage and it's like you never really know that how things that we experience lead to even the health issues that we develop. mental or physical, emotional or spiritual. So I employ anyone who has experienced this, even if you feel like, you can't go to a family member, get it out, say it, just get it out, start getting it out, start letting your voice be heard, even if it's to
Yes.
a friend, just
Yes.
start getting it out so you can start doing the work. Um, and people who suffer, when you suffer that type of trauma early age, you tend to have to grow up fast.
Yeah.
It's like you're made or put in a position to grow up fast because your body, the chemical exchange or activations that happen, you're too young to really understand it, and it also alters your hormones. Um, so you're put in a position, like I said, you grow up, you tend to grow up fast, and it's like you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders because you don't have an outlet to release or just to kind of talk about these things. So even if you can't go to a family, if you go to a friend, start talking about it. Start taking your power back by sharing your story,
Absolutely.
creating a voice for yourself. That's how you take your power back. That's how you heal. Share your story so that you can maybe prevent this from happening from someone else. And when I screamed that out in the church, I remember not caring. I'm like, I don't care who knows this. I need to know this. Like, this is like, this needs to be said.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize at that point and at that moment that I was breaking a cycle.
Mm.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful, Shahil.
Thank you.
That is just so beautiful. Every time I hear people, I mean, my whole life, for whatever, I mean, well, I know the reason, but people confide in me about so much. I tell people all the time, I have so many secrets to take to the grave. No matter
Hmm.
how people have treated me, the stories that they've shared with me, I'll take them to the grave because I would never betray them like that. And
Hmm.
your story, I have heard it so many times from so many women.
Hmm.
And I thank you so much for sharing it because it will help somebody else get the strength and courage that they need to say something. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Whew. Um, so, with that being said, I wanted to, like, of course, in your introduction, I mentioned you being a spiritual healer and teacher and all that good jazz. So, I wanted to ask you to please tell us about your company, Mystic Healing, for my
Okay.
spiritual folks out there who
And even non-spiritual people.
well,
I
yes,
have
of
no
course,
respect for
the
people.
non-spiritual, and
Um,
yeah.
so Mystic Healing Works was established about 2.5 years ago. I literally have been doing spiritual work for 4 years, but professionally full time for about 2.5 now. And Mystic Healing Works was established at that point. Now, when you get into spirituality, there are many different modalities to go into, many different pathways to choose. But with me, my focus has always been on healing. So, some of the things that I specialize in shadow work, um, inner child work, healing the divine masculine, healing the divine feminine. And a lot of my clients are actually people who have experienced sexual trauma and sexual abuse. So I'm very well versed with working with these type of energies. And I have created programs and platforms and tools and resources to help people heal not only just their sexual energy, but heal from any type of trauma that they may have experienced. Um, so, I do offer a array of services, coaching, counseling, healing sessions, for people of all different walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that I have done and have created and the tools that I have used have been the things that have helped me heal from my own personal sexual trauma. Um, so that's a bit it about what I'm doing professionally.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely a person who, and I feel like spirit has put me in a position to heal from this. That's why I attract so many people who have gone through these type of experiences. I even do womb care healing for women. I don't know if you ever saw the live video that I did on Facebook when I did like 60 wound care healings for women. I'm actually getting ready, prepared for an event, a 3-hour workshop that I'm doing here in St. Louis, for women who have been sexually abused. So we're going to do wound care healing, educate them on sexual trauma, create a sacred space for them to tell their stories, teach them the importance of their yoni and their womb, and create a sacred space so women can come in and tell their stories and heal from those things, and so that they can become empowered, so they can begin to live their best life. So, I'm even doing community work that's based on sexual trauma. And I'm so honored and I'm so blessed to be put in this position to do so. And I know that I would have had to be able to be in a place where I've healed from mine so that I can help people empower themselves and finally release those shackles and that weight of that trauma.
Absolutely.
So I was so excited to even do this podcast because recently, these past 4 months, I've been pushed to, or being led to, dive deeper into these avenues, as far as healing sexual trauma. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what I do. But
that's
I'm so
beautiful.
honored to even be on this platform to share this. And I hope, my intention is that my story and everybody else's story who you work with, I hope that it reaches millions of people. I hope that it reaches the people who it needs to reach so that they can receive some type of message, some type of courage, some type of get up and go so they can start taking their power back.
Yes.
And really
Thank
heal
you.
from these things. So thank you so much for this opportunity and this beautiful platform that you have created, by giving the LGBT. I know it's a lot of other, but we not gonna get into all of that. The community, a voice. So thank you for, I think what you're doing is absolutely beautiful, and I know that it's going to yield very fruitful results for you.
You are so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. And I know your website, but the website so people can reach you, because you all have to understand, anybody that watches this and hears his name, he goes by Shahil now, but he was born Cameron Curry. But people, when they see this, because you have a huge ass following, and he's not on Facebook anymore because somebody hacked his account and he didn't need to be on there no way because it was too many people,
I was making too much noise. I was spreading too much light on that platform. They had to boot me out.
What is your website for people to reach out to you who are seeking?
The website is www.mystichealingworks.com, and it's MYSTICWORKS.com. And you can also reach me on my email, which is mystichealingworks@gmail.com. My Instagram platform is Shahil, that's SHAHIL_11_11, or you can type in Cameron Curry. It'll bring it up that way as well. That's my Instagram platform. And also my YouTube page is Mystic Healing Works as well. Those are the best avenues to reach me. And I definitely look forward to connecting with all who feels compelled and are drawn to me, but only from the heart space. If it's not from the heart space, I don't want it.
I know. I know you don't. Because they throw you money, you're gonna take it, and you're like,
It's not, yeah. All money is not good money.
No.
So yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love you so much, Shahil. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Oh my goodness, I appreciate you.
I'm gonna say a little prayer and do some intentions to get this video seen, because this needs to be heard. This needs to be seen.
Yes. Yeah. I need this, like you said, I want this to reach millions, and it empowers so many people, so people
Yeah.
can tell their stories and be heard and heal.
And for those of you who don't know, I work with Angel very closely. So I have been right here from the very spark of inspiration that she got from this idea to where she is now, where she is finally creating content. I am so proud of you because I have literally watched you get it out of the mud, do everything yourself to create a platform that is so beautiful, that is so powerful, and you will reach millions.
Thank you.
And this is just coming like I want these people to know. I've been here since the beginning of you starting this. So to see it come into fruition and to be one of the first people who you interviewed and have on your platform, I am truly honored. And I cannot wait to a few months from now and be like, oh my God, look at how you have blown up. I was there first. You know what I mean? Type of thing. But I am so proud of you.
Thank
You are
you.
in divine alignment for what it is
Mm,
that you're doing. I remember having a conversation with you about saying it's something you're gonna be doing for the community, something for the community. And man, I'm so impressed and happy to see you actually moving forward with it and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and step out of your comfort zone
oh
and
my
putting your
gosh.
gifts on display. So blessings to you.
Thank
Infinite,
you
infinite, infinite blessings and
for sure.
gratitude.
Thank you so much. I'm
You're
always
welcome.
I hear lately I'm like, I feel so exposed. Y'all don't know how many tears I cry behind the scenes, just trying to get my voice, even if it's rattling, to talk into this mic and to this,
Rightfully so.
yeah.
And it's and you know what? It's gonna become second nature. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank
And I look
you.
forward to seeing more content. And if you ever want or never want to have me back on, I am open to that.
See, that literally is what I was about to say. I need you back on because there's some other stuff I want to talk to you about. We can
Okay,
talk about
great.
that. We can talk about that off camera though.
Yeah, great.
I love you, Shahil. Thank you so much for sharing
I
your
love
story.
you.
Oh my gosh. You have a wonderful day, okay?
True love. Have a good one.
Thank you.
I um that interview with Shahil was extremely powerful, so heartwarming, and as he said, and as I say, my wish, my intention is for my podcast to reach millions of people. Um, Anybody who comes across these videos, these podcasts, hear these stories, and be empowered to share their stories, and as he said, remove the shame and guilt from it and get on a journey of healing, which is so important for you, first and foremost. But with that being said, I again thank you, Shahil, for sharing your story. I am so grateful for you. Um, and like I love to repeatedly say, you are loved, you are supported, you are enough, and you for damn sure worthy. I love y'all. Take care. Thanks for joining us on Under the Umbrella podcast. Check us out on Instagram at UT Umbrella, on Facebook at 1UT Umbrella. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Under the Umbrella and visit our website at utumbrella.com. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. If you had a question to submit for the Ask Angel segment, please submit to contact@utumbrella.com. See you next week.